Exciting news, folks. Pagan will be creating a new soundtrack for The Jazz Singer now that The Jazz Singer has gone into public domain. And we're not going to talk about that today on Bog Panda, but we will talk about public domain and The Jazz Singer a little bit. I'm Kelly at Welcome to Bog Panda, and I'm Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram.
Welcome to Bog Panda again, only this time more sincerely. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment, turn on notifications, leave a comment on another video. You can leave comments on every video. There's no extra charge above our free price line to get in here. And make sure you guys check out the merch, not free, but you're going to feel bad getting all this great content for free. So you're going to want to give back, and you're going to do that by buying some merchandise. And make sure you guys check out Hard No, the world's shortest podcast. But it's the library is getting longer. So even though the episodes are short, the library is ever growing.
Once a day, you're going to get a new Hard No, folks. So once again, for that low price of free. So excellent.
Yeah, we're going to give it to you hard every day.
There you go. And speaking of free, a number of things.
Not speaking of giving it to you hard.
No, no, we're not. You might be sincerely, but I'm not. So, but I'd prefer we talk about public domain a little bit, and that there's a once a year is a special time where things click over, and it becomes a time when movies, books, songs, at least the lyrics in the music to the songs, not necessarily specific performances, move into public domain, which means we're free to use them without getting a copyright claim on it. And as we're into 2023 here, a couple things of note have moved into public domain. We were going to mention a couple of them, chat a little bit about public domain stuff in general, and maybe wrap up a little bit talking about the ever crafty Walt Disney Corporation. But couple things for public domain this year, as I mentioned in the intro, The Jazz Singer. Mike's favorite movie, King of Kings. I think that's, you watch it kind of on infinite repeat. That goes in there. One of my actual favorite movies, Metropolis, has also now gone into public domain. So I think you'll see some Metropolis footage making its way into future Bog Panda productions now that it's a little more available to us. Any of those three movies in particular, they're not the only ones, but those are some of the bigger named ones. Any of those you're excited about?
I don't know that I've ever seen the original version of The Jazz Singer. I saw the remake. Of course, I think it's been remade a few times now. I saw the most modern remake of it where they made the bold choice to continue to do the blackface scene in it. But I saw that version of it, and I didn't go back and find any of the other ones. Metropolis, I'm a big fan of, though.
Yeah, and there's some pretty cool versions of Metropolis out there, like with Queen music and colorized versions. And it's a tough one because they didn't do a whole lot to maintain stuff back in the day. And so there are like multiple edits of Metropolis. There is a fairly lengthy one that includes basically place cards come up and talk about, here's what happened in the scene that is gone right now, but this is what would have happened there, so that you can kind of understand it in its whole entirety. But yeah, I think Metropolis is a fantastic movie. Song wise, Putting on the Ritz is now available to us, as is My Blue Heaven. And Dr. Mike has some interesting trivia on My Blue Heaven, but not the song. But I learned from you that this was actually a sequel to this. The Steve Martin My Blue Heaven was a sequel to another.
Goodfellas. Yeah, it was made as a companion film to Goodfellas. So the book Wise Guy was licensed to be made into Goodfellas. And the problem that they were having with it is the first half of the book is all the serious, him getting involved with the mob, the famous train robbery, all that kind of stuff, him turning state's evidence and all that. And then when you get to the part of the story where he goes into witness protection, it became more comedic and didn't kind of fit the tone of Goodfellas anymore. Because he became the first, if I remember correctly, him and his wife became the first people kicked out of witness protection because he just kept committing crimes. And they had to keep moving him to different places, and he would just make a spectacle of himself, and because he kind of wanted the celebrity to go along with it. So eventually they just kicked him out. They were like, you refuse to take the witness protection portion of this seriously. So they threw him out of witness protection. So they decided to separate it. And some of the people who were involved in that, I don't remember the exact split of how it happened, but there were people who were involved early on who took that half of the book and decided to make a comedy at the same time. And they produced it as sort of like a companion piece to it. And they made that My Blue Heaven, the Steve Martin movie, which follows in the portion of the book of him getting kicked out of witness protection.
Yes, the very interesting Steve Martin catalog of a variety. Very creative guy. Went some interesting directions here and there. Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. One of the most interesting little detours.
I'm a giant, so I've never been a huge Steve Martin fan. I really genuinely love My Blue Heaven. That and Goodfellas combined are probably, I think of them together because I tend to watch them together, knowing that they're two halves of the same book that they're based on. So I think of them together. It's one of my favorite mob movies. But I'm a big fan of his current show, Only Murders in the Building.
Excellent show. Really enjoy that. I'm not really much of a Martin Short fan.
Neither am I. Yeah,
he's a small dose kind of guy, and kind of plays a very similar character most of the time, irritating and unpleasant, and someone I don't want to listen to. Which this character kind of has many of those attributes, but I actually find him a lot more tolerable in Only Murders in the Building. So it's been fun. And Selena Gomez does a great job too. So it is a fantastic show.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that show. Like I said, I nothing against Steve Martin. I'm just not a big fan. I don't really feel too strongly one way or the other. I'm not a big fan of Martin Short. Selena Gomez, I'm aware that she's a singer, but I'm not familiar with her music or anything like that. So I kind of went into it with not particularly high expectations, just wanted to check it out, and I love the show.
Yeah, likewise. Fantastic show. And just to kind of wrap up the public domain discussion, next year would be the year that Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse, that version of Mickey Mouse, not the later highly merchandised one, but the original Mickey Mouse from Steamboat Willie would fall in the public domain. Now, Disney has done a bunch of things to try and protect it.
Yeah, so it should have happened already.
Yeah, but Sonny Bono, Congressman Bono, took it into to our fine Congress and managed to get the timeline extended for when things would fall into public domain, pretty much exclusively at Disney's behest. But Sonny's gone, and next year their protection's gone. But if you've watched any Disney stuff over the past couple years, what they've done is now a lot of times the introduction of a Disney movie, you actually get a little clip of Steamboat Willie and Mickey Mouse and the Disney logo and kind of rolling into there, and they're trademarking that. So you can take something that's about to go in public domain, and if you actually make it kind of integral to your brand or logo or some things there, you can potentially do some things that you can put a trademark on it and then gain some protections back. Because I think Disney's main motivation is to keep Mickey Mouse out of Mike Bolinski's hands.
Pretty much, yeah. And this is a really important thing. So even if they weren't doing the trademark thing, and trademarks are different than copyrights, they also have a very limited lifespan that they have to be renewed on a regular basis, unlike a copyright, which goes for the length of the life of the copyright holder or the creator of the copyright, and then a certain amount of time afterwards for business purposes. Trademarks have to be renewed on a pretty regular basis. So obviously they're going to try to use the trademark to say that this is their trademark. And if you use anything from Steamboat Willie, you're infringing on their trademark, even though it's no longer copyright protected. More importantly, though, even if they weren't doing that, Kelly brought up an important thing in there. It's the Steamboat Willie short specifically that's going into public domain, not the Mickey Mouse character as a whole. And that's a thing that people have to kind of keep in mind when you're delving into things like this. So one of the interesting things with this year's public domain drop is the final original Sherlock Holmes stories are now public domain. That's an important one because Sherlock Holmes the character has been public domain for quite a while. And that's why there's so many different adaptations and things like that. When larger adaptations have come along, though, particularly TV shows or Hollywood feature films, the Conan Doyle estate has sued to get money and credits and things on those, even though the character's public domain, because they have been using the fact that some of the stories were still copyright protected. And therefore, it was infringing on their copyrights because people think of Sherlock Holmes as the whole body of work. And because certain character traits and things like that were developed in later stories, they're infringing on that copyright. So it does kind of get murky when you get into certain things that have had a long lifespan, characters like that. And, you know, most recently with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, the first Winnie the Pooh story is public domain, but there's a reason you don't see any Eeyore or Tigger or any of the other characters and things like that, because they're not public domain. And the traditional look of a lot of the Winnie the Pooh stuff is created by Disney and their particular spin on it. So that's not public domain.
Yeah, but the original depictions of Winnie the Pooh and Piglet are much more in line with Blood and Honey. I think they are kind of more.
This is the more traditional. But that's why they don't have probably the more traditional, or they couldn't do that even if they wanted to, because the way that we think of the Winnie the Pooh characters is the Disney rendition of the Winnie the Pooh characters, not the way they were originally drawn for the first story. So you are kind of getting in murky territory with some of this stuff. Sherlock Holmes was a little bit more of a stretch, especially as more and more of the catalog fell into public domain. It was really just the family trying to cling to something and make whatever they could off of it. Whereas Mickey, you're looking at an uphill battle if you try and use that, even if Steamboat Willie does manage to fall technically into the public domain next year.
Yep, and I fully anticipate them continuing to load that boat up. That little steamboat's gonna have Pooh on it, Aladdin.
That logo, that opening credit logo is gonna be 35 minutes in a few years.
This boat gets bigger and bigger, and do what you got to do. But Hard No is not in the public domain, so go listen to it. You're gonna have to pay our highly exorbitant price of free to listen to it, but we've got a while to go before our stuff falls into public domain.
Bog Panda.